Before we get into the Season 2 recap of Bridgerton, if you need a Season 1 recap, just hit the tab in the upper right-hand corner. I do warn you, though, I forgot one of the Bridgerton's 8 kids. It's been mentioned in the comments section about 19 billion times, so just ignore it, but it's there if you need it. In Season 2, we have a new season, and 2 of the Bridgerton kids are looking for a match, although neither one is really all that interested. You've got Anthony, who at this point is just settling down to shut his mother up. And you've got Eloise, who she's just of age, although she's dreading it too. Daphne has actually come back, leaving the Duke and her child back at home so she could help out her sister with the whole season. The Featherington girls are also looking for a match after striking out last year. The only one who found a match was Philippa, and she's waiting to marry Mr. Finch, but they still have to pay the dowry, which they don't have. They're waiting for the new Lord Featherington to come over, and they're kind of dreading it. The stories about this guy don't paint a pretty picture. Mrs. Featherington is actually convinced that because of the fact he hasn't shown up yet is an indication that he's punishing them. In order to make ends meet, they might have to start selling off some goods. Now, because they were presented to the Queen last year, they don't have to go through the whole ceremony that Daphne went through and they went through, where you have to go to the Queen and bow and do all that crap. Eloise, however, does, and she is dreading it. She's nervous, she's kind of hyperventilating, and even though Daphne is giving her tips, she just doesn't look as composed as her sister did a year ago. She also has the pressure of what her sister did a year ago weighing on her shoulders. That doesn't help either. But when it comes time for her to make her introduction to the Queen, and by the way, it's not like the Queen doesn't know who she is, it's still a formality, her introduction gets interrupted because Lady Whistledown is back. And as soon as the new pamphlet comes out, the Queen immediately gets distracted and calls it for a day. The city scoops up the newest edition of Whistledown, reading her every word, finding out where she's been, and getting the latest gossip before the season really kicks off. This means a lot of money for Penn. While most of the city is reading Whistledown, the Bridgertons head back to their place, and Eloise continues to learn how to properly dance. Anthony is also preparing, but he's looking at this strictly as a business transaction. He goes through an interview process, just like you would to interview for a job. Although none of the women even come remotely close for his ridiculously high standards. It's not like he's due to take just anybody. He truly is looking for that special somebody. The problem is it's hard to have chemistry with a guy when he's interviewing you. A couple of days after finding absolutely no wife, early in the morning, he's on horseback. He's kind of just sitting there with his thoughts, and then all of a sudden somebody whizzes by him on a horse. He thinks the person's in trouble, and he goes chasing after them until he reaches a roadblock, which they jumped over and he's unwilling to do. And that's when he sees that this person on horseback is actually a female. She kind of gives him a nod like, I just bested you, but he's not deterred at all. He finds a shortcut and catches up to the woman. She doesn't introduce herself, but her name is Kate Sharma. And while she's there for the season, in the moment, she's having just a nice conversation with Anthony Bridgerton. They both have no idea who they are. But right off the bat, Anthony is smitten pretty hard. He tries to escort her back to where she's going, but she has no interest in that whatsoever. When she takes off, he's more intrigued by her than ever. But she's actually staying at Lady Danbury's house. Her mother's an old friend of Danbury. And Kate, along with her younger sister, Edwina, have arrived for the season. Although not so much for Kate, strictly for Edwina. Even though Kate is 26, she's really being an advisor to her younger sister. And by advisor, I mean she's being a total bitch. And I mean that as respectfully as possible. But there's a lot of pressure on Edwina to be the diamond of the season. Danbury knows she can help, while Kate thinks she's got it all figured out. While they might differ in opinion, Edwina has 2 really intelligent women in her corner. Edwina wasn't able to make the initial introductions to the Queen. This was by design by Lady Danbury. She wants to oversee the first introductions between Edwina and the Queen. And that makes Miss Lady Sharma very uncomfortable. That's because Lady Mary was the diamond of her season. That is, until she had the audacity to fall in love with just a common man. She eloped with him to India, and her parents never lived down the shame. Her returning is a pretty big deal. It's quite scandalous. A lot of women never thought that she would show her face there again, but she's back with her 2 daughters. Doesn't mean she's not nervous, though. But she has to get Edwina ready for that night's ball, hosted by Lady Danbury. Everybody's going to be in attendance. But Edwina is quite nervous before she makes her first big appearance. She sits down with Kate and has a conversation because she can tell that really her mom is nervous, which is making her nervous. She's also very concerned with her relationship with Kate. They're not biological sisters, they're half-sisters. Gossip like this could ruin her. Kate, however, promises that Lady Danbury will smooth everything over, and Edwina has nothing to worry about. I mean, after all, Kate has been training Edwina for this moment basically her entire life. She's ready. She tells her, this is the first chapter of a happy story. Don't forget, it's not an appearance or a title that will woo you. It's his mind. That'll catch your eye. They then get dressed and head into the ball. Right away, Lady Danbury starts pointing out potential suitors, but not for Edwina. She's pointing them out for Kate. But Kate tells Danbury that she has no interest in finding a match for herself. She's strictly there to help her sister. She then starts quizzing Danbury on what she's heard about certain dukes and lords, because Kate has done her research on potential matches for Edwina. The queen then walks in and catches Danbury's eye, and she decides to have the introductions with the Sharmas sooner rather than later. Rip the Band-Aid off, which Lady Mary isn't a huge fan of, but once again, you gotta rip the Band-Aid off. And it goes horribly. Lady Danbury makes the introduction, but the queen knows exactly who Lady Mary is. She gives her a snide comment and walks off. While the Sharmas are a little down, Lady Danbury loves a good challenge. As Danbury was having the introductions with the queen, the Bridgertons were showing up. It's the last place that Eloise wants to be, and it's not like Antony's all that interested in being there either, but it's a formality. He has to. He does, however, get really mad at his mother when she proclaims to the entire room that the Viscount is looking for a wife this season. All of a sudden, he is inundated with women looking to add his name to their dance card. The Featheringtons have also arrived. Philippa goes and finds Mr. Finch, but Mr. Finch's parents are also there, and they're wondering where exactly the dowry is so that they can wed their son to Philippa. Mrs. Featherington, not having the dowry at the moment, puts on the waterworks, making up a lie that she just is still dealing with the loss of her husband, hoping that that's going to buy her some time, which it looks like it's going to. As the party's going on, somebody catches Kate's eye, and it's Antony. She recognizes him. After all, she did have a conversation with him a couple hours ago. She asks Lady Danbury, who is that? And Danbury says, oh, that's the Viscount. I don't think I've made an introduction between you two. You have quite the eye, though. He's wealthy, he's well-connected, and he comes from one of the most illustrious families in town. He may be our most eligible bachelor this season. Kate finds him attractive, and so does Edwina. A man then comes up named Lord Corning and asks for Edwina's hand to go take her out to dance. And Kate has to approve of it. Edwina trusts Kate no matter what, and she looks to her for all signs on what to do. It shows how powerful Kate really is in this situation. Danbury has to tell her that that's not the way you do things. You don't turn down dances if you have an open space on your card. Frankly, it pisses her off. And speaking of dance cards, Eloise's dance card is full. Although it's full of fake names. She has absolutely zero interest in dancing with anybody. She'd much rather hang out with Pen. Although Pen is more interested in collecting information for her next edition of Whistledown. But even though Eloise has no interest in dancing with anybody, doesn't mean that Lady Bridgerton is going to allow her to just sit back and be a wallflower for the entire party. She pulls her away from Pen and starts introducing her to people. As the party goes on, Kate cannot take her eyes off the other Bridgerton, Antony. And when he steps outside to get some air, she kind of follows him. Antony, though, sees a bunch of guys that he knows, so he goes over and starts conversing with them, and Kate ends up eavesdropping on the conversation. She doesn't like what she hears. The way that Antony talks about the season and about finding a wife, it leaves a lot to be desired. He doesn't really care about a love match, or at least that's what he tells the guys. He basically talks about finding a wife like you would finding a horse. It completely turns Kate off. She tries to get out of there, but she knocks into a flower pot. It alerts Antony that there's someone around the corner, and it leads to a very awkward conversation between the two. He starts off very friendly, but she starts off very hostile. She admits to eavesdropping on his conversation, although she claims that it was loud enough for anybody to hear. But she makes it very, very clear that what she heard, she didn't like, and she takes off. Kate walks up to Lady Danbury, who's in mid-conversation with Lady Bridgerton, and she tells her, we're leaving now. We were unprepared to handle this lion's den, and we're leaving. It catches Lady Danbury completely off guard. She was actually having a conversation with Lady Bridgerton about the fact that they have common interests, i.e. Edwina, or Kate for that matter, and Antony. So this conversation is a pretty big turnoff, but Kate's not asking permission. She's more of giving a directive. She's not the only one that wants to take off, though. Penelope wants to take off because she has to get her next edition of Whistledown to the printer. Although right before she leaves, Eloise stops her and latches onto her. It's not like Pen can tell her that she has to go, so she's going to have to wait until she gets home that night to head to the printer to get the next edition out. The next day, the next edition of Whistledown does come out, and a lot of it has to do with Antony, and if he's really ready to settle down. But the big crux of the issue has to do with the fact that the Queen has yet to name a diamond. Whistledown states that if the Queen doesn't do it, maybe she's going to have to do it for her, which pisses off the Queen, because she is hell-bent on finding out who Whistledown is this season. The entire town is reading Whistledown. They're also getting ready for the next party. The Bridgertons call the modiste to help with Eloise's dress, and as the modiste is leaving, she runs into Benedict. Benedict is thrilled to see the modiste. The modiste, however, is kind of weird with him. Very short. When Benedict asks if he will see her later that night, she says she's busy with work. Oh, God, I've heard that before. It's always an excuse. They're never busy with work. They're busy with another guy. Anyway, I'll move on. The awkward conversation is seen by Antony. So when Benedict sits down, he asks, what was all that about? Benedict, however, switches the topic of conversation immediately, asking if Antony's entire game plan is just to insult every girl that's available until there's none left. That way, he doesn't have to marry. Antony doesn't want to have this conversation, so he tries to leave, but his mother is right behind him and grabs him. She starts trying to find out if maybe her son is interested in any of the women that he was talking to. She starts mentioning, well, this girl was nice and that girl was nice, but the fact is, Antony isn't interested in any of them, especially the women that his mother's mentioning. He tells his mother in not so many words that he doesn't appreciate the women that were pushed in front of him. What he's looking for is perfection, and he simply hasn't found it. And the fact that his mother is pushing women on him that he doesn't consider perfect is making him question his mother's taste, and her decision-making for that matter. I mean, after all, this is going to be the future woman of the household. His mother, however, is concerned that at the end of the day, he's going to end up alone. Now, down the street at the Featherington household, Pen is extremely stressed out. The stress of getting caught as Lady Whistledown is starting to get to her. When Prudence comes in and notices that she's been writing, Pen gets super nervous that she's going to be found out. Prudence just says that she's been writing to Colin Bridgerton. And her mom has to come in and explain that Colin Bridgerton is not her friend. While Colin Bridgerton actually is her friend, what her mother's really trying to say is Penelope is wasting her time on this dream that she's going to end up with Colin. I mean, after all, Colin is gallivanting through the world. It's quite frustrating for Pen. She's not the only woman in town that's frustrated. Lady Danbury is also frustrated with the person that's living in her house, Kate. She knows that Kate has been going on morning rides, even though Kate has been trying to hide it from everybody. Kate has done a pretty good job, but Lady Danbury tells her, I know everything that goes on here. She then pulls out correspondence to Kate's grandparents, but Kate lets her know, those aren't my grandparents. I have no relation to them whatsoever. But even though they're not Kate's grandparents, they are Edwina's grandparents. Lady Danbury tells her that the real reason of the conversation is to figure out why Kate didn't tell her the real reason why she showed up with her sister. She wants the truth. After all, she's been extremely kind to an old friend, and now she's got a woman living in her house that's lying to her. There's something fishy with this story. Kate eventually comes clean. She tells them that the grandparents never recovered from the embarrassment of their mother moving to India and marrying a common man. After her father died, her, along with Lady Mary, did the best they could to raise Edwina so she wouldn't know about the struggles they were actually dealing with. But because of it, they went broke. They actually used the last of their money to get into town to get to Lady Danbury's house. The grandparents, who are the Sheffields, have agreed to put a sizable dowry to Edwina and have agreed to also look after Lady Mary if they find Edwina a suitable husband. And by suitable, it means somebody with rank and title. That is why Kate is so hyper-focused on who is talking to her sister. While she tells her sister it's about love, in her mind, that's just a bonus. This is about her mother surviving. Lady Danbury tells her, your sister does have a right to know. It is her future. But Kate says, no, that's why I shield her from this. If she knew about this, she would marry the first guy she met very quickly just to please us. Edwina deserves a chance to find love, although she better find love with somebody with a nice title. Lady Danbury realizes they really do have their work cut out this season. The next night, they have the next party. Lady Danbury escorts Lady Mary, Kate, and Edwina back up to the Queen, saying hello to her. The Queen is as rude as she was the previous night, but all the Sharma women keep their head held high. Lady Danbury tells them, go have some refreshments, and then she has a private conversation with the Queen, and she spends it selling the Queen on making Edwina the diamond of the season. Edwina, though, has some competition. Despite her best efforts, Eloise has her introduction with the Queen. The queen does apologize for having skipped over the introduction a couple days ago, which, by the way, it was fine with Eloise. But when she tells her that she has some big shoes to fill because of last season with Daphne, Eloise makes a comment that she's not into diamonds anyway, she's into emeralds. It kind of takes everybody off guard, but the queen loved it because the queen loves emeralds. It makes Eloise think that she really does have a chance of being named the diamond of the season. She runs off and starts panicking to Pen about the whole situation. She can't believe the queen likes her. She confides in Pen that the stress of living up to Daphne from last season is getting to her. She knows that every time she walks into a room, they're comparing her to Daphne. It sucks that she just can't be herself. But as those two are having that conversation outside, inside, the queen is announcing her diamond. And it's not Eloise. To everybody's shock, it is Edwina. Because Edwina was named the diamond, it catches Antony's eye. And he runs up to get the first dance with her. Because it's a Vi account, he's able to. As Antony is getting acquainted with Edwina, he starts conversing with her, and she is just what he was looking for. She's well-spoken, she is interesting, she is perfect. While those two are dancing, Kate is thanking Lady Danbury, but Lady Danbury tells her, I hate to break it to you, now the real work begins. They might not have to work too hard, though. Antony and Edwina are smitten. But when Kate sees Edwina dancing with Antony, she's completely against it. She rips Edwina away from the conversation and tells her sister, you are not to go near that man again. Everybody then goes home, and when the Featheringtons get home, there's a bunch of suitcases in their foray. That's because the new Lord Featherington has arrived, and he was not as advertised. Lady Featherington had made him out to be this old, decrepit, angry guy, and in fact, he's a lot younger. That's because the guy that she was describing, he didn't show up, his son did. And he couldn't be more unlike what she described. He's already paid the dowry, so Philippa can get married. And it seems like he really is going to provide for them. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought this sucked. Make sure to be nice in the comment section. If you don't see the next video up in the end screen there, I'll get it up in a few days, not to worry. And I have merchandise, so go buy a mug or something. It's never too early to think about Christmas gifts, folks. Once again, thank you for checking out this recap.